Everything about Rolex bears the imprint of one exceptional person, a historical watchmaker that has reigned both land and sea. Rolex is a name that is synonymous with luxury. It is a well-known name that is linked to precision, quality, and creativity. However, how did the company grow from being started by an orphan to the billion-dollar powerhouse that it is today? In today's video, we'll delve deep into the history of Rolex, a 108-year-old watch brand that conquered the world. Hans Wilsdorf and his brother-in-law, Alfred Davis, founded the company in 1905, marking the start of Rolex's history. The company was founded in England at first, but soon after it moved to Switzerland. Hans had the idea and Alfred had the money. Working together seemed like a no-brainer. Surprisingly, Hans was neither English nor Swiss, and watchmaker did not run in his family. Hans was born in 1881 in Kulmbach, northern Bavaria. He was the middle of 3 children born into a prosperous middle-class family. His grandparents were wealthy and his parents ran an ironmonger in Kulmbach. However, when Hans reached the age of 12, both of his parents died suddenly. After that, his aunt and uncle took custody of the kids and they promptly sent them to a boarding school in Coburg. Hans finally graduated from school after many unhappy years, and at the age of 19 he moved to Switzerland, La Chaux-de-Fonds, in search of a better life. La Chaux-de-Fonds was a major watchmaking centre at the time. This made it an excellent location for gaining exclusive experience, and it was here that Hans first took an interest in the world of watches. After working for a pearl merchant, he was hired by Kuno Korten, a growing watch company. Hans became fascinated with the watch movements in their accuracy while working for Kuno Korten. This was the start of his lifelong passion. Following his days working for Kuno Korten, Hans decided it was time to launch his own watch manufacturing career. When he moved to London, he found his brother-in-law Alfred Davis as a suitable partner for his project. Together they founded Wilsdorf and Davis in 1905. At the first, the company imported inner watch parts and housed them in British cases before selling them to jewelers. The duo recognized the potential for developing their own brand as a result of their initial success. They secured the Rolex name 3 years later. While the brand started in London, it quickly expanded to Switzerland, and Hans began to dream about a wristwatch that was elegant, long-lasting, and precise. In the early 1900s, men began to wear watches on their wrists rather than their pockets. However, it quickly became clear that wristwatches would have much harsher lives. Pocket watches were kept inside clothing and thus largely protected from moisture, rain, and dust. Wristwatches, on the other hand, were far more vulnerable, and they were widely regarded as a delicate item of women's fashion, and they weren't very precise yet. However, Hans observed the men at the time despised wristwatches. He also thought they had a lot of potentials, and he predicted that he would become not only elegant, but also dependable, both in terms of durability and precision. Seeing an appeal for precision in timekeeping, Hans set out to constantly improve the movements of his watches, and his efforts were rewarded in 1910 when Rolex became the first wristwatch to bear the Swiss certificate of chronometric precision. But as a perfectionist, Hans didn't stop there. He wanted his watches to be both precise and durable. Above all, he wanted Rolex to be known around the world. This would require some serious thinking outside the box. Hans knew how to present his inventions to the public in the best possible way, and some unusual stunts took place over the next few decades. It all started in 1926 with the introduction of the waterproof Oyster case. The innovative case was supposed to be water and dust proof, and they put it to the test by giving one to Mercedes Gleitz. Mercedes was a British professional swimmer who set out to be the first woman to swim across the English Channel, and Hans made her wear the original Oyster during her daring feat. Mercedes' record attempt was foiled due to the poor weather. She was rescued after spending more than 15 hours in the icy waters, but her Rolex was completely unharmed, and despite hours of exposure to cold seawater, it had kept accurate time. The long and difficult swim received widespread acclaim. To increase publicity, Rolex placed fish tanks in store windows with the oyster submerged to demonstrate its waterproof qualities. The entire world was impressed, and gradually even the most unexpected characters were spotted with a Rolex on their wrist. While Rolex has always been at the forefront of technology innovation, it was not nearly the status symbol it is today in the 1960s. A Rolex was primarily a functional tool rather than a decorative accessory for much of its history, and at the time, Rolexes were not as excessively priced as they are now. But why is this? Well, you may be surprised to learn that it is largely thanks to a crisis that Rolex used to its advantage. A so-called quartz crisis began between 1970 and 1980. That's what the Swiss watch industry called it. It began on Christmas Day in 1969, when the Japanese watch brand Seiko introduced the world's first quartz wristwatch, the Astron. It was a huge success and many other brands quickly followed suit. Quartz watches were battery powered, and these watches were more precise and less expensive. People all over the world switched from mechanical to quartz watches, and Swiss watchmakers risked going out of business overnight. Accepting that they would never be able to compete on price with Asian watchmakers, Swiss brands such as Rolex decided to offer something else: their heritage, status, and craftsmanship. Throughout the 1980s, Rolex made significant investments in developing the renowned brand image that it has today. Rolex was able to stay relevant despite the quartz craze thanks to these marketing strategies, and over time, their watches became objects of desire rather than utility. But Hans was no longer present to witness it all. In fact, he had long since left the watch business in 1945. After his wife Florence Crotty died, he handed over control of the company to the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation. He died 15 years later in 1960 at the age of 79 in Geneva. Since he had no children, the company's ownership and control were also transferred to the trust. Rolex is now one of the most prestigious brands on the planet. As well as the world's leading luxury watch manufacturer, over 2,000 Rolex watches are crafted daily, resulting in billions of dollars in sales year in and year out. It is really no surprise that Rolex has a crown as its logo. The Swiss luxury watchmaker is the #1 name on everyone's lips when asked about brands that represent boldness, extravagance, and class. While many people believe that Rolex watches are overpriced, this is not the case. After all, creating these works of art take a lot of time and effort. The materials used are the highest quality, so they will not be cheap. Rolex watches are entirely handcrafted by the most skilled watchmakers. The company expects nothing less than the best and maintains strict control over the processes and materials used in production. If a timepiece is set with gems, you can be certain that every single one is internally flawless and that it was set by one of the 20+ specialists who are solely responsible for setting gems. The company will only use 950 platinum or 18 karat of gold for its materials. Its rose gold is a proprietary alloy called Everrose, and its ceramic is an extra hard material called Cerachrome that is virtually impossible to scratch and does not change with UV exposure. Oyster steel is a type of steel used in the aerospace industry due to its corrosion resistance. The art of watchmaking is a time-consuming and difficult profession that can be expensive. Rolex has several extremely well-equipped and highly professional research and development departments. They also only employ cutting-edge tools and equipment. All of this ensures that the company can consistently develop new manufacturing techniques and technologies to stay one step ahead of the competition. It is no surprise that a company is so expensive if they ensure that everything they produce is made with only the highest quality materials. That's it for today. When will you get your own Rolex? Let us know in the comments section. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do that also.